New book out about President George H.W. Bush from someone who knew him extremely well, Jean Becker, President Bush's chief of staff.
The book is called The Man I Knew, The Amazing Story of George H.W. Bush's Post-Presidency, and she joins us live. Good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning. I'm very excited to be with you guys today.
When you would see Bush and Clinton together, I always wondered, okay, is this a show or is this genuine? What are your thoughts on that relationship?
I get that question a lot, Larry. I love that you asked it. There's an entire chapter in the book called The Odd Couple, which is what Barbara Bush used to call her husband and Bill Clinton. I tell one story in the book, and it's sort of a long story, so I'm not going to tell all of it today. You have to read the book. Tell all the viewers you need to read the book. It's about the two of them going to Pope John Paul II's funeral together, and how President Clinton wasn't supposed to go because he just had open heart surgery, but President Bush talked him into going because he thought the two of them would have fun together. It was the real deal.
I imagine the president was devastated when he lost to Bill Clinton. Was that something that continued as he progressed through life? Was that something that he still thought about a lot, or had he moved forward from that?
He moved on, Lauren. The first year, or I would say the first 9 months or so, it took him a while to lick his wounds and to sort of think through the fact that he had lost. I remember one time in a conversation with a friend who had just gotten fired from a job, and his friend was very depressed and embarrassed and was telling President Bush, he literally said to him, "You have no idea what it feels like to be fired. It's just so embarrassing." And President Bush sort of looked at him and said, yeah, I was fired by the American people. I know exactly how it feels. But, you know, he got over it. This is a man who was shot down during World War II when he was 20 years old. He and Mrs. Bush lost their precious daughter, Robin, to leukemia. He had a lot of speed bumps in his life. And one of the things I loved and admired about him was his resilience and the fact that he could count Bill Clinton among his best friends by the time he died. That says just about everything.
Yeah. I mean, even if you're not a political junkie, you recall the read my lips, no new taxes, which is kind of what sank his presidency when he raised taxes. But after many years gone by, we've kind of elevated, I think, his standing as a president. Is that just because of nostalgia, or is there something more to it?
I think there's something more to it. And, you know, when the 1990 budget deal is what you're referring to, in which, with a compromise with the Democrats, President Bush agreed to a slight tax increase in return for budget cuts. And that budget deal is now credited with the economic boom of the 1990s. And what's really interesting, Larry, is the day he agreed to that compromise, he confided to a friend, "I think I probably just made myself a one-term president." He knew that politically he was rolling the dice, but he did it anyway because he thought it was the right thing to do. And I think in this day and age, with politics so tumultuous right now in our country, I think people look back on him and just really admire that he stood on principle. And you know, he was the best at doing what he thought was the right thing to do.
Did he want his children to pursue political aspirations? He obviously watched Jeb, and then George W. Bush has sent to the presidency. Was he excited to see that, or was he somewhat cautious, having been there and done that?
Lauren, he was so excited. You know, there was sort of this myth that the Bushes sort of planned out taking over politics in the United States. And Mrs. Bush used to laugh when she would hear that rumor. She said, "Oh, good gosh, I was just hoping they would grow up and be able to talk in complete sentences, much less run for office." She was probably the more hesitant of the two because she knew what politics could do, how complicated they could be. George W. and Jeb both ran for governors of their state, Texas and Florida, in 1994. so President Bush's second year out of office. I definitely think their campaigns is what helps him snap out of his post-election malaise. He was very excited. He was all in.
And I think a lot of people thought Jeb Bush would become president, at least first. How hands-on was George H.W. Bush with his sons? Was he constantly giving them advice, or was he hands-off?
First of all, I did one of the smartest things I ever did, particularly when George W. Bush was president. When he called his dad, and if I was in the room, I would get up and leave the room. This is a huge disappointment to historians and to journalists who thought I could leak like a sieve to all of them about what the two of them used to talk about. But I made the decision that all those conversations needed to be private. And sometimes President Bush would tell me, no, Jean, stay. And I'm like, no, I'm going to leave the room. He gave advice when they asked him for it. But he also knew that both Jeb and George were their own people, and he trusted their judgment. And mainly, he was just a father to them. He was more a father than he was an advisor.
Jean Becker, thank you so much for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jean.
Have a great day.
Thank you, too. The book is called The Man I Knew, The Amazing Story of George H.W. Bush's Post-Presidency.